When we think about activism, our minds often jump straight to images of protests in the streets. The signs, the chants, the crowds.
The classic picture.
Right. But what if we told you that the struggle for change, for liberation, it goes way beyond the pavement. It's evolving into this incredibly diverse, digitally driven, and often kind of surprising landscape.
Indeed. Yeah, we're definitely living in an era where activism is being redefined. It's shaped by technology and, well, human ingenuity in ways that, our predecessors probably couldn't have imagined.
So today we're taking a deep dive into the many faces of modern activism. We'll be unpacking insights from a really powerful resource highlighting 26 ways to be in the struggle beyond the streets from the Disability Visibility Project.
That's a great one.
Yeah, and also critical analyses of digital activism and some fascinating case studies of how creativity and technology are like literally reshaping what it means to demand change.
Our mission here is really to uncover this huge range of ways people are making a difference. We want to explore the power, but also, the pitfalls of online engagement and show you how innovation is transforming the fight for social justice.
Okay, so let's unpack this. This Disability Visibility Project list,
Yeah.
26 ways to be in the struggle beyond the streets, came out in 2020. What's really fascinating here is its core message.
Yeah, what's so powerful, I think, is how it explicitly celebrates all contributions to liberation. It really recognizes that for all sorts of reasons, physical, spiritual, personal circumstances, a lot of people just cannot physically be in the streets.
Right.
And it affirms that all these other contributions, they're valued, they're political, and they're militant.
So if you've ever felt like, you couldn't participate in traditional activism, maybe you felt excluded, this offers a whole new way to look at how you can engage. It kind of broadens the definition.
Precisely. And the list details a ton of concrete actions. For instance, educating and informing, like hosting or just attending know your rights trainings to empower yourself in your community,
Oh, yeah.
or, providing financial support, giving money, fundraising online, maybe donating business proceeds to organizations working for Black liberation or against police violence.
Mhm.
And it even mentions giving directly to individual Black activists for essentials, rent, food, medicine through things like Venmo or Cash App.
And it goes beyond just money too, right?
Yeah,
I thought the emphasis on logistical aid was really insightful.
it is. Yeah. The source talks about being an emergency contact for people who are going to marches,
Yeah.
collecting vital info like their full name, date of birth, maybe medical details if they share them.
Important stuff.
Crucial stuff. And knowing numbers for groups like the National Lawyers Guild. And a key tip they give is print this information out. Don't store it online, like on Google, where it could potentially be subpoenaed.
That focus on safety is huge. And beyond the sort of direct action support, they also highlight supporting communities, fostering well-being.
Yeah, things like coordinating or providing childcare for protesters. Obviously, being careful with health risks, especially during a pandemic, keeping groups small, planning for things like arrests.
Right, the practicalities.
Exactly. Or even just preparing meals before or after a march, or ordering food delivery for people. Simple things that make a big difference.
And nurturing well-being, too, you mentioned.
Absolutely. Attending or organizing what they call healing justice events, being a grounding or self-care buddy, regular text check-ins, reminders to drink water, helping create postmarked grounding plans, even sharing herbal first aid guides.
It's interesting.
Yeah, the source really emphasizes that state violence impacts our spirit, our well-being, and that self-care in itself is a revolutionary act.
That's a powerful framing. And for those with artistic talents, the list really highlights driving cultural resistance.
Oh, definitely. Creating art, music, poetry, graphics, videos, anything that speaks to the issues around police violence and social justice. Making new chants, designing signs. And critically, the source emphasizes funding and investing in Black artists because that cultural work itself is seen as resistance.
And it also talks about leveraging your unique skills,
Yep.
whatever they might be.
Exactly. If you're an educator, maybe write curriculum or strategize with other teachers on discussing these issues. Got IT skills, offer data entry or archiving help, have a car, maybe be a transport hub for supplies.
Right.
And for white or non-Black people of color, the list encourages specific actions like reflecting on identity, having conversations with family and friends to build awareness, and directly investing or redistributing resources to Black people and Black-led initiatives.
There's also a point about amplifying safely, which seems crucial in the digital age.
Super important. Circulating breaking news or visuals, yes, but being extremely mindful not to share images of people's faces without permission. That can help police track protesters.
So what do they suggest?
Use blur tools, emojis, or even screenshot images instead of just forwarding them, because that can strip out metadata.
Ah, okay.
And accessibility is key too. If you're multilingual, translate documents or media. Support access for people with disabilities, captioning images, making materials accessible for blind, deaf, hard of hearing, neurodivergent folks.
And finally, combating digital surveillance.
Yeah, learning and teaching others how to use encrypted messaging apps like Signal, creating DIY Faraday bags, those are pouches that block signals to protect devices, disabling Face ID or fingerprint locks in favor of a PIN, turning off cloud data syncing, practical digital security.
Wow, okay, so that list really broadens the scope. And given all these ways to support, the digital realm has obviously become this massive amplifier. So when we talk about digital activism today, what exactly is it and how has it changed things?
Well, at its core, digital activism is simply using digital tools, the internet, social media, email, mobile phones for political action, mobilization, and trying to incite change. It's been around in some form since the 90s, really, but it just exploded with Web 2.0 and the rise of social media.
And the tools themselves just keep evolving, don't they? What are some of the big ones we see making an impact?
Oh, absolutely. You've got everything from online petitions, think change.org, which make it super easy to gather signatures and get attention on an issue quickly.
Right, those are everywhere.
And there's social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, now X, YouTube. They've become just indispensable for spreading messages, raising awareness, building support, especially using hashtags. Remember the Arab Spring back in 2011? That was partly organized and amplified through these platforms.
And mobile phones, I mean, they're central to pretty much everything now.
Totally. They're incredibly versatile. Instant donations, right? And the built-in cameras have completely revolutionized how people document and share evidence, think about videos of police brutality, often in real time. Plus, you still got blogs, which are like uncensored journalism, good for longer form communication, and crowdfunding platforms, Kickstarter, Indiegogo. They're huge for digital fundraising campaigns.
So for you, the listener, someone who wants to learn and maybe get involved quickly, what is it about these digital tools that makes them so powerful right now?
Well, I think one of the clearest advantages, especially thinking back to the pandemic, is accessibility. You could participate while still following social distancing rules, which wasn't possible with traditional mass gatherings.
Good point.
And beyond that, digital tools offer just instant connectivity. You can reach a huge, potentially global audience almost immediately. They really empower anyone with internet access to have a voice, a platform. And that allows groups, even disparate ones, to mobilize much faster than ever before.
Okay, but with all that power and reach, digital activism gets a lot of criticism too, right? We hear terms like slacktivism or clicktivism. What's the core argument there?
Yeah, that's the big debate. Critics basically argue that a lot of online activism can be seen as, well, lazy or ineffective.
How so?
The idea is that actions like just sharing a hashtag or liking a post might make the user feel like they've done something meaningful, but in reality, it has very little actual impact.
So the main criticisms are?
Usually it's about superficial engagement. These low-commitment actions, like a like or a retweet, are seen as just symbolic gestures, not real work.
And the fear is that this easy stuff might actually replace deeper engagement.
Exactly. That's a major concern, that it substitutes for more meaningful action, like actually showing up for a protest or volunteering time or making a financial contribution, leads to what some people call armchair activism.
Okay.
It can also create this false sense of accomplishment, maybe reducing the motivation to do more substantial things. And complex issues can get boiled down into simplistic slogans or hashtags, potentially oversimplifying important nuances.
Right. Nuance gets lost easily online.
For sure. And there's this issue of attention without accountability. Raising awareness is one thing, but does it lead to the sustained effort needed to tackle big problems long term?
But it's not all negative, is it? I mean, other research suggests these small actions might actually be important starting points.
That's the fascinating flip side, yeah. There's a strong argument that clicktivism, even if it seems minimal, can be an initial step, a kind of gateway to deeper and more meaningful forms of participation.
The gateway. How does that work?
Well, for people who are new to activism, these really accessible, low-threshold actions, like signing an online petition, provide a way to just get familiar with the cause, to dip their toes in.
Okay, that makes sense.
And interestingly, some research suggests that even passive online engagement can actually increase someone's sense of political efficacy, their belief that they can influence political outcomes. That feeling can then empower them to get more deeply involved over time.
So it can be like a ladder of engagement, starting with a click. and maybe leading to more significant action. And it definitely plays a role in shaping narratives and boosting awareness on a huge scale, right? Like we saw with the Arab Spring, those retweets and shares spread information incredibly fast.
Absolutely. Which brings up that key question. For you as someone engaging online and for movements themselves, how do we find that balance? How do we make sure awareness translates into tangible, sustained action?
Yeah. And that leads us right to the crucial point. Digital activism seems most powerful when it actually connects to offline action. That seems to be where the real impact often lies.
Exactly. Bridging that online-offline divide is often critical for creating real change. You mentioned the 2011 Egyptian revolution. Social media was huge for mobilizing protesters online, who then took to the streets in massive numbers.
We've seen that pattern again and again, haven't we?
Definitely. Think about the hashtag #MeToo movement, or hashtag Black Lives Matter, or the climate strike movement led by Greta Thunberg. All of them use social media incredibly effectively to drive enormous offline protests and actions.
And activists aren't just showing up offline. They're getting incredibly creative, making sure their messages are unforgettable, impossible to ignore. It's like nonviolent action has become this kind of performance art sometimes. I read there are over 300 documented methods.
Oh, the creativity is amazing. They're finding ways to, startle people awake. Remember when Anonymous allegedly wired Russia's security systems to mimic Ukraine's air raid sirens?
Wow, I hadn't heard that one.
Or an indigenous-led group projecting messages against a racist hotel onto the building itself? Late projections.
And making complaints really memorable, too.
Yeah, like the report about strippers dressing up as OSHA violations, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration to protest unsafe workplaces.
That's certainly memorable.
Or that story from India about a pregnant mother continuing her sit-in protest for land rights even while she went into labor. Her son was literally born into the struggle.
Incredible. What about using surprise, doing the unexpected?
That's a common tactic, like Myanmar's silent strike. Instead of filling the streets, they completely emptied them. Total shutdown.
Ah, the opposite effect.
Right. Or, in New Zealand, activists sent actual clowns to the transport agency telling them to stop clowning around on climate policy.
Okay. And crashing big events, that seems popular too, especially sports.
Oh, sports have a long history of protest. The Black Power salute at the '68 Olympics, Colin Kaepernick kneeling.
Sure.
More recently, in Serbia, soccer fans unfurled these huge banners listing U.S. military intervention since World War II. In the UK, climate activists ran onto soccer fields, locking themselves to goalposts, saying, "You can't play soccer on a dead planet."
And wasn't there someone who glued themselves to a basketball court?
Yeah, the glue girl, drawing attention to animal rights abuses at a farm owned by the team's owner. Very disruptive, very visible.
These actions really try to reclaim the narrative, maybe subvert official messages or propaganda.
Definitely. Like when New York City released that PSA about surviving a nuclear attack, saying, "You got this," peace activists immediately spoofed it, saying, "No, you don't got this."
Right.
Or the whole birds aren't real movement started partly as satire to fight lunacy with lunacy, but they show up with signs at real protests now. And in the UK, actor Hugh Grant reportedly helped activists play a silly, cartoonish theme song whenever certain conservative politicians were giving speeches nearby. Political satire in action.
And some actions just tap into really deep, poignant emotions, don't they?
Very much so. After the Uvalde school shooting, parents played audio recordings of their children outside the Texas governor's mansion.
Oh, heartbreaking.
And that incredibly powerful project, the NRA Children's Museum. It was a convoy of 52 empty school buses, each filled with memorials and personal belongings representing the, I think it was 4,368 children killed by gun violence over 2 years.
Yeah.
Just devastatingly effective imagery.
Wow. They're even innovating on classic protest forms.
Yeah. Workers gift wrapping 900 understaffing incident reports and delivering them to their boss. A Palestinian activist using a drone to fly a Palestinian flag over an Israeli nationalist march. In India, citizens blocking traffic with empty cooking fuel canisters to protest high prices. The creativity is just boundless.
So this whole landscape is clearly in constant flux. But what happens when activism pushes further into the digital realm, maybe becoming more disruptive online?
Right. That brings up the whole area of hacktivism, which is basically using hacking techniques, computer hacking, for political or social causes, using digital tools for a kind of civil disobedience.
Okay, so it's literally hacking plus activism. What kind of forms does that take?
Well, you see a few common types. Website defacement, changing a website's appearance to make a political statement.
Right, like digital graffiti.
Kind of. Then there are denial of service or DOS attacks. That's overwhelming a server with traffic to make a website crash or become inaccessible. Data breaches are another infiltrating systems to leak confidential information, sort of like digital whistleblowing. Sometimes you see doxing, which is publicly releasing private info about individuals or organizations, often controversial, and website mirroring, making copies of sites to preserve content if the original gets taken down.
The ethics around hacktivism must be really complicated, right?
Yeah.
Contentious.
Hugely contentious. There are really two main camps. One view sees it as a potentially powerful tool for transparency, accountability, freedom of information, giving a voice to marginalized groups who might not have other ways to be heard.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Proponents point to hacktivist actions that exposed corporate wrongdoing or government abuses. Like during the Arab Spring, hacktivists helped bypass government censorship. Or maybe the most famous example is the Panama Papers leak in 2016. An anonymous source leaked millions of documents exposing how wealthy individuals and officials were using offshore firms, potentially for tax evasion.
Okay, so exposing things hidden from public view.
Mm.
But the other side must see it very differently.
Exactly. The opposing view basically says, look, it's cybercrime, plain and simple, regardless of the motive. They argue it violates privacy, can cause real harm to individuals or systems, and often lacks accountability.
Like the Ashley Madison breach.
That's a prime example often cited by critics. In 2015, hackers leaked incredibly sensitive user data from that extramarital affairs website. It caused immense personal harm and raised huge ethical questions about the justification, even if the hackers claimed moral motives. It really highlights the dilemma.
It's definitely a tricky balance. So, thinking bigger picture now, beyond even hacktivism, the future seems set to bring even more technological shifts. What emerging tech might reshape how movements mobilize and engage?
We're definitely looking at some potentially transformative technologies. Artificial intelligence, AI, is a big one.
How could AI be used in activism?
Well, it could analyze massive data sets to understand public opinion, help personalize campaign messaging, maybe even optimize strategies for mobilization.
But there are risks there too, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Big challenges. Potential misuse for spreading disinformation, creating sophisticated propaganda, even bot activism, where automated accounts mimic real human engagement, making it really hard for you to tell what's genuine support online.
Right. What else? Blockchain keeps coming up.
Yeah, blockchain could offer possibilities for more secure and transparent fundraising, maybe even decentralized forms of organizing, making movements more resilient to censorship or shutdown.
Interesting. And things like AR and VR, augmented and virtual reality.
Those could be used to create really immersive storytelling experiences, helping people connect emotionally with distant issues. You could even potentially see virtual protests or events happening within VR spaces, a whole new kind of participation.
Wow. And we're actually seeing some of these dynamics, especially the digital organization and the challenges, play out right now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Tell us about what's been happening in Kenya with the Gen Z-led protests.
Yeah, Kenya is a really powerful, very current example of youth-led, digitally driven activism. The trigger was the proposed Finance Bill 2024.
Who was in the bill?
It included significant tax hikes on everyday items, things like bread, cooking oil, mobile money transfers, which are huge in Kenya, and even an increased tax on menstrual products.
Oof, especially with high unemployment.
Exactly. Unemployment is around 12%, but for youth, it's something like 68% of that number. Plus, there's a severe cost of living crisis already. So these tax hikes hit incredibly hard. Protesters even started mockingly calling President Ruto Zakayo after the biblical tax collector.
And what's unique about how this movement organized?
What's really striking is that it's decentralized, no single clear leader. It's been almost entirely led by young people, Gen Z, organizing online, primarily using hashtags like #RejectFinanceBill 2024 across platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and X, formerly Twitter.
So using the tools we just talked about.
Absolutely. They're actively educating each other, sharing information about the bill, live streaming memes and police responses directly from the streets. It's very digitally native.
But the response has been harsh, I understand.
Extremely. There have been widespread reports of police using live ammunition, resulting in, tragically, at least 23 deaths confirmed so far. There are also allegations of activists being abducted, threats against local media outlets trying to cover the protests, and reports of internet throttling or shutdowns to disrupt communication.
And the military got involved.
Yes, the Kenya Defense Forces were deployed onto the streets, a move the Law Society of Kenya has argued is unconstitutional. It's raised serious fears, especially given Kenya's history, about potential escalation and repeating the kind of violence seen after the 2007 election.
So what's the outcome been as of now?
Well, facing immense pressure, President Ruto announced he would not sign the finance bill and send it back to Parliament for amendments. He essentially rejected the version that sparked the protests.
Is that the end of it then?
Not necessarily. Many protesters see it as just a Band-Aid solution. While rejecting the bill was a major concession, they're continuing to demand action on the deeper issues: the high cost of living, youth unemployment, government corruption, and accountability for the police violence during the protests. The underlying grievances remain.
It feels like part of a larger pattern of youth movements in Africa recently.
It definitely echoes other significant youth-led movements like #EndSARS in Nigeria against police brutality, or #Fees Must Fall in South Africa regarding education costs. There's this energy among young Africans using digital tools to demand change.
And how are the Kenyan youth trying to keep the momentum going now after the bill was rejected?
They're trying hard to sustain engagement. Things like translating the complex finance bill into various local languages to make sure more people understand what was at stake. They're also creating music, using art and culture to keep the message resonating and the pressure on. It's about embedding the demands beyond just the initial online surge.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive into this whole evolving world of activism, from those vital, often unseen support roles behind the scenes to, the global reach of a single hashtag and just the sheer ingenuity and creativity of protesters.
Yeah.
It's really clear that the struggle for change is way more diverse and dynamic than maybe we first think.
It really highlights, doesn't it,
Yeah.
that while these digital tools offer just unprecedented power for mobilization and awareness, their true impact, it seems, often comes when they translate into tangible offline action and manage to foster sustained engagement over time.
Yeah.
And for you, as someone navigating this as a learner, that critical thinking about the information you encounter online, spotting those echo chambers, trying to discern genuine commitment from just, performance that becomes absolutely essential.
So as you reflect on everything we've talked about today, maybe consider this. In an age where almost any contribution can potentially be amplified, but where digital spaces also present these immense connections alongside some pretty insidious challenges, what new forms of activism might we see emerge in the next 5 years? And maybe more personally, how will you choose to engage in the conversations and the actions that matter most to you?